Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Grab a seat. We're going to have an amazing talk right now with Karthik Pallapothu and Ryan Thorpe from Adobe. Please give them a warm round of applause.
All right. Yes. No smoke show, no light effects. Okay, I guess we got the basic package. Sure. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Look at the crowd. This is great. Thank you for spending the time with us on a Friday afternoon, although we all know there are better places to be, aka happy hour. So thank you. Before we start, quick introduction. Karthik Pallapothu. I'm a product manager with Adobe, with our cloud operations group. A little bit about my background. I've been in the cloud space for the past 14 years, building products across both B2B, B2C, across startups, enterprises, and big tech. I've been fortunately, a few years ago, my first gig happened to be building a showback and a spend intelligence platform for video conferencing spend, which at that time was $1 billion market. So it's almost like a circle back for me with Maverick. And I was also introduced to FinOps about 5 years ago when it was still in infancy, so I was very fortunate enough to get into that very early on. Last gig at Google taught me how to appreciate user-centered design and experimenting at scale. So here I am, I guess, happy to share my journey of how we brought two things that we love the most, FinOps and user-centered design via Project Maverick.
And I'm Ryan Thorpe. I actually got my start in banking at Goldman Sachs. I was working on debt products and a little bit of strategy, transitioned into the startup world, and I've been building out data teams in data science, data platform, so data engineering, software engineering, and recently made the transition to Adobe. Very excited to be talking with you here today, so let's jump in.
Awesome, guys. All right, I know this is San Diego, and we've all partied with Mr. Maverick, Tom Cruise, yesterday on the ship. So it's only fair to expect, sorry to disappoint, we are not learning how to fly an F-18 Hornet, no. Instead, we are actually going to learn about Adobe's journey to our FinOps space, some of the challenges that we are facing and have faced, and how we are trying to solve with our inbuilt solution, Maverick. We'll dig into a demo, quick architectural details, and then we'll probably leave you with a couple of key learnings so that you don't have to make the same mistakes that we've done. Let's dive in. Why are we here? As some of you in the audience are probably aware, Adobe has been on its FinOps journey for over a few years, I would say a decade or so. And we've had quite a number of successes under our belt, starting with establishing a core FinOps group and principles that have enabled team collaboration between finance, product, business, and accounting and procurement. We even democratized all of our spend data and provided visibility via our multiple data dashboards, our tools and processes. We even have a centralized cloud business office, right? Yes, cloud business office that enables all of the capabilities that the FinOps Foundation lays out, including driving automated chargebacks that saves millions of dollars every year. At the same time, well, we've made our own mistakes and have our own set of challenges. As we started to mature in our FinOps journey, and as we started to operate at the scale of our spend, we quickly ran into a lot of challenges that made us realize that even though we consider ourselves to be kind of somewhere in the walk-run intersection, it's still not a once and done thing. FinOps is a continuous iteration process, and we have a lot of work that we had to do to go back and improve it. So why don't we quickly dive into some of the challenges and see if anyone else can resonate with that.
So one of the first problems that we have is partial spend visibility. If we think about Adobe, we basically have what we consider like direct consumption. So we might have an AWS account. You'll have engineers directly consuming from that. But then we've also built what we call Adobe platform. So we have a content platform. We have a Kubernetes solution. We have multi-tenant. And really, we want to be able to try and see the end-to-end and have the TOC. So that's definitely one of the key problems that we have. The next one is missing chargebacks. So chargebacks are fantastic for the reason of we want to hold accountability to those that are consuming and actually spending the resources. And the last one is disparate tools and data silos. Who here, with a raise of hands, has a bunch of data all over the place within the company and no single source of truth?
No, you're not allowed to do that. You're Adobe. You're trying to solve your problem.
That's right, we're trying to solve the problem, okay. Yeah, it's a very common problem, and especially with Adobe, as we've kind of had a cloud presence and made that migration, as Karthik had mentioned, over the last decade. We have multiple different departments internally to Adobe that have their own sources of truth. Adobe is also a company that has made a lot of acquisitions, so with that, we have different companies that we've had to bring together. So this is certainly one of the key problems we do face.
And how about the user experience? So our users were extremely frustrated with the different, the number of tools and dashboards and UIs and processes that they had to touch every single day in order to get to the right information, in order to drive some of those meaningful decisions. Some of our colleagues sitting in the audience today can attest to that today. And these were apparent from the negative CSAT and the NPS scores we constantly kept getting back from our users. Not to mention, to Ryan's earlier point, the product teams really didn't have visibility into fully loaded cost of ownership. They only had a piece of the puzzle which kind of inhibited them from making those data-driven margin decisions and drive some of those optimizations. Okay, great. So mid last year, we took a pause, went back to the drawing board, and asked ourselves the question, knowing what we know now, based on all of our learnings, what would it take or look for us to create a brand new cost management solution driven by user-centered principles and product management frameworks that, working as a startup within a big company, how does that look like? The answer, friends, is Maverick. Maverick is basically an internal Adobe platform, which is a spend intelligence platform that is potentially built to serve 3 primary and initial use cases to address some of the challenges. It's aimed to serve as the single pane of glass, providing 360-degree visibility into all of a product spend, includes public cloud. We have a massive on-prem presence, third-party vendors, or massive internal platforms like Kubernetes as a service or the content platform that a lot of our end products build on the top of and offer to our external customers. Second one, we intend to serve as the centralized automated platform to drive a lot of the showbacks for these horizontal service providers or platforms that we internally have, and drive that accountability eventually through automatically doing chargebacks and moving the budgets around, so finance kind of doesn't have to get involved, and it just reduces the friction there. Lastly, our goal at the end of the day is enable product teams to understand their product unit economics, analyze their spend, and drive much more margin decisions based on the data. Now, with this said, when we started out, in the last 8 months, I think we've built a ton of features that enabled some of these capabilities that we just talked about. So today, there you go. Today, Maverick can actually support 30 plus, more than 30 different spend sources across some of our major CSPs like AWS, GCP, and Azure, as well as a long tail of our third-party vendors, including Snowflake, Databricks, Splunk, New Relic, and a long list of vendors that we're constantly trying to onboard onto the platform. We can also provide visibility into our massive spread of on-prem / private cloud, as well as some of these big internal platform spends that we are incurring today.
Another one is data normalization. Who here loves the focus framework?
Yes.
Great, yes? Okay. We also love it. Unfortunately, it's not moving at the speed we need it to in order to really consume all the data to build this model. And so we've come up with a custom schema internally to Adobe that we call CUBOD, which stands for Cloud Usage Billing and Optimization Data. as we've kind of been talking about, we have our Kubernetes platform, we have the content platform, we've got all the CSPs that Karthik mentioned. And so we have a lot of different formats of data coming in, but we've normalized that across the board and also built it in a way that can be very easy for people to integrate with our platform as a kind of a bring your own data model. The next is anomaly detection. So we know that with all these different data feeds that we talked about coming internally and externally, it's in critical importance to make sure that we know that our data is accurate, that it is timely, and people can build trust in what we are doing. So we built in an anomaly detection engine that we'll walk through in a little bit. The last is an accounting ledger. So really when we talked about how the data can basically move through the platform, it's kind of like a Russian nesting doll. So Adobe spends $1 externally, call it on AWS, and then you might have a multi-tenant solution called the Kubernetes, and then there's going to be another platform that's building on top of that, and then you're going to eventually get down the stream to where you have, call it Photoshop or Lightroom, as being an external product, and we need to be able to see all the way through to that spend.
And just to double click on Ryan's point about focus. So when we started, focus was basically like in its early infancy, and looking at all of the announcements that are being made. So our architecture is basically adjustable enough where we can simply adopt focus once the industry catches on. So it's a minimum work for us to actually do that.
Exactly. The next one is usage metrics. So if we think about the fact that we're going to have multi-tenant solutions, or we're going to have, call it just unit economics, we have all these internal teams that are going to be measuring their capabilities in a particular way. So we support those multiple different formats, and all of our data is ingested daily through these usage metrics.
Okay, showbacks. So right now, our goal is basically to serve as that one central platform where all of our personas, including finance, to do the showbacks, right? So we support that by allowing people or teams to bring their own allocation models and logic and their own usage metrics and data. So we don't want it to be a one-size-fits-all solution. So we have multiple integration formats. We have multiple usage metrics and models and numbers and formulas that we can support. So again, this is part of our scheme to democratize how to do showbacks. At the same time, as Ryan mentioned, we support multiple levels or tiers of showback. As once the spend comes from our direct CSPs, we allocate it to the actual platforms or products that are consuming it, and then we do a second tier allocation of passing back those horizontal shared services costs to the individual applications or products that are consuming it, with a potential to allocate those all the way to our end customers that we are selling our products to. So you can directly to calculate the COGS and the OPEX that your customers are driving on your platform that can inform your margin decisions and your revenue numbers. And the other one is, again, we support 80% or ish of the use cases out of the box with our UI. Adobe loves different dimensions and different kinds of metadata. Finance has one, accounting, ServiceNow, product units, business groups, sales. There is no one way to actually slice and dice. So we enable supporting multiple metadatas where people can now slice and dice using different hierarchies. So that suits the needs of individual personas that are using our product. We also enable people to save different filters and share those views with your teams or your other groups that you're interacting so that you can have those conversations easier and faster. I mean, who here loves clicking through a bazillion filters to actually get to the data, right? So we try to reduce the friction to use our platform. Oh, the fun stuff, yes.
Yes, security. It's an exciting one, but it's also critically important, right? As we think about Adobe, absolutely make sure that security is a top priority. And when we think about just the scale and the size of our company, we need to make sure that we're appropriately locking down the data, also making sure that people have access to the right information. One of the key things that we've developed that's a pretty cool feature that we'll show you here in a second is called impersonation. And this basically allows us to take an entire kind of, let's think about like an organizational tree, right? And let's say that I'm a VP within a particular business unit. I can actually go through and see what is my direct report spend, what is it within somebody within their organization, And so there's a lot of capabilities that are great. The other is we also know that there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all model, and so we have an exception workflow where people can basically mirror access of somebody else within the company in order for them to perform their jobs.
All right. I think it's enough of talk. Ready to dive in and walk them through the product?
I'm excited. Let's do it. All right. So I'm going to walk you through, this is basically our landing screen. In the left nav here, I'm going to walk you through some of this. So the spend insights is basically the view of where it's going to serve personas such as a VP, a director, it could be an engineer, it could be an analyst within the organization for them to be able to go understand what is the spend within that business unit. Within showbacks, which Karthik is going to talk about here in a little bit, this allows us, call it like platform owners or people that are going to drive spend for, or own, call it like Snowflake as a service internally to Adobe, to be able to see what does it take for them to run their service, and then who are their customers. We'll get more into that in a second. The third one down in the left nav is spend health. So we believe that it's great to have transparency in terms of how fresh is our data, how accurate is our data. And so for each of the different spend sources that we're ingesting, we'll let our users know when was the last time we ingested data, what is the fidelity of that in terms of do we have missing dates, is there anything they need to be aware of. Also, what's really cool is in the bottom that we're not going to demo today, but two other capabilities is the budget management and forecasting and spend optimization, which I think is kind of this holistic to end-to-end view that I think some of us have kind of seen here at the conference this week of this is kind of the full journey that we need to go through. So I'm going to put up some really cool GIFs on the screen because unfortunately we can't play videos, but this will kind of give you some idea of kind of what the product does. Looking to the far left, spend at a glance. So basically this gives you a full in view of what is my spend over a particular time period, and we show what the time period is there. And then below that, we have four main categories. In Adobe, we call these hosted domains. So we have our public cloud, which is going to be anything we're running on AWS, Azure, GCP, and this is going to be what we would consider direct cloud consumption. Then we have our private cloud, which is the data centers that we run. Adobe platforms. It's going to be like the content platform we talked about, Kubernetes, anything that we built internally to Adobe that is also running on the public cloud in some instances or in other services such as the next category down, cloud service software. And cloud service software is going to be Snowflake, MongoDB, Splunk, New Relic, et cetera. All right, in the middle pane, this allows us to see how is our spend trending to date. And then also, what does that look like in terms of month over month? Again, just a quick view into the spend. And then on the right-hand side, you can see that I'm clicking into View By, and today I'm Karthik. I'm looking at my spend. And this allows us to use a single visualization, but to tell multiple different stories. And so in this drop-down, I can pivot the data to view by hosted domain, which you can see right there, or I can click on provider, which would tell us about ACP or AWS, GCP, Snowflake. And the view that we kind of have right here is showing what is my spend, assuming that I'm Karthik. So when I first come in, this is my organizational spend. If we were to scroll down the screen, we also have some other visualizations. We have a cool donut chart. I'm not sure if anybody loves pie charts. I certainly don't. I love the donut charts. And then we have essentially a graph line trend view that we can also pivot based upon time period. And then we can do that same thing that I was just showing you earlier where we can view by different dimensions. So in this instance, we can see COGS and OpEx. We can also go down to resource type, and I'll show you kind of what that means here on this next slide. Oh, that's the old one. Cool. So if we look at this is a way for us to explore our spend to essentially start to filter down what do we really want to look at from that main view. So we can filter by a particular hosted domain. We can look at a provider, which would be like AWS, Azure, Snowflake. The offering, which would be the SKU. So if we think about MongoDB, we have MongoDB running on our public cloud. We also have Atlas, which is a true SaaS solution. And then we have resource type. Resource type is really cool. So what we've developed is a cloud agnostic solution for us to be able to see, regardless of the provider, where the spend is coming from. We can say, what is the storage cost? What is the network cost? What is the compute? For you to be able to view it through that lens. Right here, I'm showing the impersonation with that drop-down, and you can see that Karthik can go through and look at his colleagues or anybody else within the organization. And the last thing I'll point out here is showing settled spend, which is right next to that drop-down. This basically allows us with anybody that's consuming AWS data through the CUR, it takes time for that to bake, especially if you have discounts or credits. It can take a long time for that to fully settle. And so we have this toggle on here so when we can basically tell our customers, okay, here's when you can fully trust the data. It's not going to move on you. It's fully settled. And you can start to make educated decisions. All right, Karthik, let's talk about showbacks.
Before I jump in, quick disclaimer. Obviously, this is synthetic fake data. Ryan and I have no intention of getting fired on the stage. So I have to say it. I'm being recorded. So great. OK, so what you're looking at right now is actually our showback module, which is basically a view for our service provider owners, like the leaders who own these horizontal platforms, like it could be our own internal developed platforms, again, content platform or Kubernetes, or even Adobe works in a way where some of our third-party spend, like Splunk and New Relic, is actually owned by a single person, a leader, a cost center, that eventually have to charge it back to the relevant user. So this is a view that's dedicated for that persona, which helps them understand. The far left is, OK, what am I actually spending for my platform, and what is the makeup of it? Like, what part of it is coming from these different 4 dimensions that we talked about? And it helps them understand how am I trending month over month. And the far right gives them a quick visibility into some of the drivers that are either driving the cost up or down. So without having to really spending a lot of time, they can make those quick decisions or drive some of the optimization conversations by looking at this data. We also provide a way for these platform owners to understand the product unit costs. We support multiple product unit metrics for a certain platform so that the leaders can then overlay some of the business drivers that are either trending these metrics up or down, or the spend up or down, and then they can figure out what is causing the spike. The right side is a quick top 10 users by your products. These are your biggest spenders that you can now go after. Have those early conversations of how you can optimize the spend. Have those discussions on how you can make them more accountable so that you can run a much more leaner organization. Now, for all of the data geeks out there, we also have the ability to provide a massive data dump of how is the allocation being done, what is the usage metric that is being used, and then it gives you a lineage and the trend. You can export it into Excel, you can export it to CSV, and do your own analysis. Again, our goal is never to be the only UI or dashboard that people have to use. We want to push out the data out as much as we can. I'm hoping some of this is actually resonating with you, for especially people going through similar challenges, maybe hopefully give you a page or 2 from the book to go implement back home. But getting here has never been an easy challenge for us. We had to really start small, go back to using the first principles. We almost went back and read the book by JR and saying OK, let's define our personas. Let's understand what some of those guiding principles are. What should our strategy be? What is our core tenets? And we also leaned heavily on user research and tried to do a massive, a bunch of user interviews using a pretty ubiquitous product management framework called JBTD, Jobs to Be Done, where we asked, there you go, someone resonates with that, there you go. So we asked fundamentally the users one question. What is the one job that you're hiring our spend management platform to do for you? What would you like the platform to do for you? Again, I think it unsurprisingly, overwhelmingly, the answer was people wanted to optimize their money or spend and keep their spend within the budgets. However, the journeys to get there were very different. The journeys to get there were very different for different sets of personas. Finance, engineering, and product wanted to optimize their spend so that they can better drive those unit economics, better track their budgets, forecast accurately in this new era of dynamic model and pricing. Engineering wanted to better re-architect their solutions with spend in mind. Did I miss? Oh yeah, leadership and financial or FinOps practitioners in general wanted to like run a pretty lean ship and basically get the most bang out of the buck. Surprisingly, well, maybe not surprisingly, users also wanted a lot of other capabilities across the user journey or the spend journey. They not only wanted insights in the current spend, but they needed the ability to show back and automatically charge back. They needed a way to detect their spend anomalies early on so that they can take the corrective actions until it's too late or it hits their budgets. They wanted to understand the unit economics. And in this new era of sustainability, they wanted to understand how they're building products more sustainably and what is the emission impact. Ask Mav is basically a way of like, users want, there's never a universe where we are ever going to be able to create dashboards enough of them that can satisfy every user need. So they want a more natural conversational way of engaging with the spend, asking those questions, following their curiosity to actually deep dive versus having to like worry about dashboards. Again, budgeting and forecasting is one big ask, but fundamentally, they wanted automated recommendations and way for corrective actions. They needed a click of a button to go and make a spend disappear. If there is an unused EBS volume, they just wanted automation, click button, low risk, high reward, get it done. So this is the end-to-end journey that Ryan was mentioning earlier that people actually wanted, and we are trying to basically get here with Maverick. Ryan, do you want to basically show them under the hood?
Yeah, let's talk into the architecture for sure. So we've kind of talked about the different spend sources. So we support 30+ spend sources, and this is everything from your external billing data that's coming from AWS, GCP, Mongo, in terms of the SaaS solution. We have all of our own internal spend when we talk about the different content platform that would mention our private cloud and our data centers. All the dimensional data Karthik was talking about, so we can slice and dice contracts, right? So not everything can come through a billing feed. We also have contracts that we need to take into account in terms of all the cost and then all of the usage data. So all this gets fed into the Maverick platform and then kind of massaged into the ledger. In terms of how Karthik was mentioning, we don't want to be the people that are just going to hoard the data, lock it up, and not give access. We believe in fully democratizing the data, putting it in the hands of the users, but we want a single source of truth. We don't want data floating around everywhere that's coming from different sources. And so with that, we just demoed the dashboard, right? That's one capability that we provide. Additionally, data shares, quick, easy way to get access to the data, APIs, and other integrations. Our key personas that we are serving: finance, accounting, product teams, engineering teams, and of course, FinOps practitioners. All right, let's dive a little bit more into what we're talking about with the architecture here. So we are fully on AWS, and we've built out a data lakehouse architecture. Obviously, those that has anybody built a data platform or been involved in building a data platform here?
Yeah.
Great. It's great to see if you raise the hands. Obviously, this has taken an evolution from a warehouse to a data lake, and now there's the data lakehouse architecture. The reason we picked the data lakehouse architecture is we don't want a bunch of ETL jobs in terms of getting access to the data. And we talked about Adobe's acquired companies, right? They're coming with their own infrastructure. Or we have other teams that have kind of built something and have their usage metrics in a particular database. And so what this allows us to do on the ingest side, we can hook into other people's Redshift databases. We can have people drop us data directly to S3. And the great thing about dropping all the data into S3 is it allows us to get snapshots and records of all of our data. So pretty much on a daily basis, we are copying a full cur and snapshotting it. And if you think about the scale of what we are ingesting on a daily basis, it is in the hundreds of gigabytes that we're basically snapshotting data daily. Putting that all into a single data warehouse makes literally zero sense. And so the reason we put it into S3 is so we can actually, in the lake house, is we can use Redshift Spectrum to go query the data in S3 without having to actually store that locally. And so we're storing all of the most recent data locally in our Redshift and building all the models. So quickly kind of walking through here in the tech stack, pretty traditional. Airflow is running our data orchestration. All of our data is stored either in S3 or Redshift. We're using Glue for data cataloging so we can actually take advantage of Redshift Spectrum. Who here has used dbt? Awesome. Do you guys love it? Excellent, yes. DBT is fantastic. So for those that don't know, DBT stands for Data Build Tool. This is a great way to build data models in SQL, and the really cool thing about it is you can create a lineage as you're writing all the code. And so you can basically say, okay, what happens if I don't get a data feed? What is that going to impact downstream? Or what if this data model broke? What are the upstream things that I need to look at? We're using QuickSight, which is what you saw in terms of our visualizations. We're embedding that, and we've written kind of the front end in React. We also believe in monitoring and alerting and making sure we know that our platform is healthy and up and running. And so we have substantial monitoring with Slack alerts and email notifications that are being sent out daily for anything that might go wrong. The data ingestion manager, I'll spend just about a minute here, or probably less, talking about this, but this is kind of when we talk about anomaly detection, this is what we built internally at Adobe. This allows us, as you're kind of looking up at the top here, we can see that we have the data lake, which is where we're putting all of our raw data, staging, which is basically inside of our Spectrum, inside of a Redshift database, and then reporting, which is what our users seeing. In the testing side, this is all the DBT tests that we're running, or anything else from a test perspective that we can say, okay, what issues might we have with our code or any of the ingestion? If we look at the offering summary, these are all the different data feeds that we have, and this will tell us on a daily basis, has the data actually flowed through, or has there something that's been quarantined? And so let's walk through into the quarantine. So once data actually makes it into Redshift, we look at various anomalies to determine what might be wrong with our data. So it could be, we might have nullable values where there shouldn't be. We might be missing spend dates. We might be seeing that there's a basket size in terms of spend that is way outside the boundary of what we'd normally see. Or we're getting files from the cur that might be actually substantially less than we'd normally receive on a daily basis. So what happens here is once it gets quarantined, our full pipeline processes end to end, but holds back that data until we can fully go look at it and say, okay, this file looks good. If it does, we hit process and everything flows through back into our reporting.
All right, let's land this plane. All right, the reason why that is all important is we strive to basically provide less than 5% of spend variance as one of our KPIs because our product is only as good as the data that we provide. With that said, our quick footprint, we've done a quick top-down analysis and we think that we have a potential of about 20,000 plus users across all of the persona in the company. It's a little ambitious, but realistically, about 5 to 10 people, or 5 to 10,000 people, which is our SAM, serviceable addressable market. As Ryan mentioned, we are processing piles and tons of data every single day, billions of rows, processing millions of credits and discounts, all while surfacing the insights with less than 5 seconds of a delta. Well, I've been asking Ryan for bring it down to 3 seconds, so maybe that could be my Christmas gift. We'll see.
We'll see.
All right. Finally, don't want to drain the slide. Again, we're firm believers of democratizing giving the data where people are spending most of their time. So out-of-the-box UI, APIs, data shares, build your own dashboards, overlay the different other data sets that you can bring to the table, and custom integration with some of our developer portals and SRE portals inside, because we realize they are the actual guardians of spend when it comes to it. So we want to give them the information where they're spending most of the time. That said, our crown jewel is heads-up display. Heads-up display is basically a Chrome plugin that was developed by our sister team, which overlays on the top of AWS Developer Console, giving the developers the right insights contextually across some of the security issues that they have to fix, operations, efficiency, how you're doing with budgets, cloud optimization opportunities. All of this data is kind of, well, some of the spend data especially is being supported by Maverick as a data plane. So one of the ways we expose and have users use our data. This is great. I mean, thank you for staying with us, Rulab. Almost done. This is great. I mean, but how do we know this product actually works? Didn't I start the presentation saying one of the big challenges is because we built too many tools and processes? Yes, we asked ourselves that question. Wait, where did my slide go? Great, okay. Hang on, guys, there's something, there you go. So I'm not going to drain this, but we hold ourselves accountable to some key OKRs and KPIs primarily the percentage of spend that gets reallocated from our holding cost centers all the way to our end products and applications that use it. We also look at the spend variance, less than 5%. That is where the DIM, Data Ingestion Manager, plays a key role, keeping that anomalies predictable. And we also measure the growth of our platform, looking at the monthly active users that are using it. We also measure week-over-week retention of users coming back to our platform, which is a direct correlation of the value add that Maverick is providing to our end users. We treat it the same way as we treat any of our customer-facing platforms. It's no different for us. We also look at some of the frequency of data updates, 24-hour refresh cycles, near real time or near time, with a couple of hours of ETL processing time, so there's minimal disruption to the end users, minimum delta from when a spend is published all the way to when a spend is actually being viewed by the users. Now, oops, I have to go backwards. So have we done everything that we've set out to? Absolutely not. We're only starting. It's only been there for 6 months, so we're learning a lot. We're slowly starting to scale and spread over to support a lot of the other use cases and capabilities our users have been asking. But some of the things we've learned along the way are treating FinOps as a product really helped us codify the best practices for effective cost management solutions and help scale in a very repeatable manner. We were able to cater to unique user needs and tailor the solution to match their needs so that there's a quick product market fit between what we're developing, which is what users are asking. We even have a center of excellence run by this nice lady here who helps with our marketing, email campaigns, newsletters, and any sorts of marketing to get our tool out into the user's hands, as well as a dedicated customer service success organization that are our feet on the ground, sending back us signals to what's working and what's not.
All right, the next one is keeping architecture simple. So as we thought about approaching this problem, we knew we could get incredibly advanced in terms of how we wanted to build this and all the different use cases there are. And we definitely took the 80-20 rule here and trying to make sure that we could build for that 80% without getting too complicated with the architecture. So I'd absolutely make sure that that's something we learned and also would recommend as well to everybody else. Lastly, change management. Certainly with being a large enterprise, Karthik, there are a lot of different teams, there are a lot of different opinions about how to approach this. And when we talk about going from basically, you might have one team that is basically creating all of the spend, or even holding the keys to all of that spend without the accountability of others being responsible for contributing to it in terms of being billed for it, right? As a true chargeback. There's a lot of change that has to happen there in partnership with finance, partnership with accounting, partnership with the product teams as well. There's a lot of impact that can happen with getting to a chargeback. So making sure you start that process very early.
Amazing. All right. Awesome, guys. That's the end of it. Thank you so much for staying with us. Thank you.
Big round of applause, everybody. That was fantastic. You guys are pros at this.
Feel
we
free
do
to
have
connect.
about 5 minutes, for Q&A. So who wants to kick us off? All right.
Sure. Wow. Great. Which means it resonated well. Love it.
Amazing talk. I have a question about your approach treating FinOps as a product. I think you guys spend quite a bit of efforts on making the UI as good as customer facing, right? I think my question is what it takes, and in that process, do you have any trade-off in terms of
Yes. So the UI that you saw wasn't built on day one. It took us actually 6 to 8 months to get here because our first UI was basically like a bunch of dashboards out of the box. We were using quick sites. We wanted to test it out, see how it resonates, set out a quick MVP, and then we did a big CSAT survey asking our power users to say, what is it that you need? What are the workflows that we can do to support? What are some of the capabilities that makes it easier? That helped us create a business case that we took forward to our leadership to reinvest resources into building a UI. Because again, as any leader would ask, what am I getting if I spend so many resources on creating this UI? So we needed that signal from the field in order to validate that we're using. So this is still, we just literally released it a month ago or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
and it's a lot more work to be done on the UI front.
Okay,
All right.
quick question. So it might be too early, but what are some of the things that you guys do to grow user adoption, like across your organization?
Okay, all right. It's been an interesting journey. So we're basically barely scratching the surface. We had a select set of pilot users. Specifically, we focused on the leadership persona or the platform providers that have this almost like a knife hanging on them in order to like go back and reallocate and show back their spend. So it was almost like a classic product fit where they had a challenge and we had the solution. So we went with those platform owners. We helped them reallocate the spend, help finance basically show back those things. We're still quite not at chargebacks 100%, but they became our early proponents where they went out, they were our own marketing staff, our team, and we're slowly getting the adoption at this point. And again, the use cases that we have are still not addressing all of the 5 personas that the FinOps Foundation lays out. We're still working how we can support the engineers and architects that have more need for detailed and granular data, something we still don't do it. So that's a growth strategy, which is my job for the next 2 quarters, I guess. So I'm hoping it'll work out. If not, I won't be here next year.
Yeah, real quick, another thing to touch on there is we've implemented New Relic on our front end, and so we're tracking all those events. So we have a lot of organic traffic that is hitting us, and so we're using New Relic to identify basically what are the usage patterns of those customers and trying to tap into them as well.
About how many people worked on the project, and what do you think it cost?
So we had when I said the startup environment, I think we were I was actually meant it. It was 1 p.m. How big was the team?
Yeah, I'd say full-time in terms of spending time on this from its inception. We had about 4 to 5 engineers working on it. In terms of once we added in the UX, we actually only had about 1 person working on that for full-time over a month. So it was definitely a smaller team. It's not like we had a team of 30, 40 engineers working on this.
Yeah, and the spend, we were basically like, we were a small project, and it was minuscule as compared to the rest of the thing, a true startup mindset that
Definitely bootstrap.
it worked out, yeah. MVP, push out, worked it. Now we actually have a budget to build the whole team and run this as a true full-blown product. So. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, great presentation, thank you. You mentioned early on in your conversation about looking at margins. Your focus here was great on spend. How about bringing the customer data in the mix? Thank you.
Yes, great question. I was literally having that conversation with our finance team here over lunch. So that's something we would like. That's our strategy, our vision. Are we there? Definitely not. So the short-term solution is we could expose the spend data at a service or an application level. Then the finance can overlay that with the customer data and then help provide that. But eventually, yes, we want to be able to bring all of these things together. Then it becomes a point of it's a true business intelligence platform versus a spend intelligence platform. So how far are we from the journey? I don't have an answer quite yet, but that's the vision.
A great presentation. At Salesforce, we are trying to build something very similar, especially on the show back line. So how do you, are there platform owners asking for specific allocations to their platform? If so, how are you making sure that you take the right inputs from every platform owner? And is the team building, is the one team building for every platform owner a cost show back, or any ways to achieve speed there?
I'll let the genius who built the platform answer that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's a lot of different things that our platform owners are asking for that are very specific to them in terms of, our content platform is going to have a lot of different usage metrics than some of our others. But with the way that we tried to build this, it's kind of a bring your own usage metrics. And with using QuickSight, we're able to make some customizations without a significant amount of work. And so kind of our strategy is when we do embed the dashboard and we're basically able to have a provider pick one of their, called the content platform or Kubernetes. On that dropdown, we can swap in different assets from a dashboard perspective to serve up exactly what they need. Again, I think we had a team working on this actually specifically for the content platform, and it was maybe 3 or 4 hours of actual work just to swap that in and add it into the UI.
Yeah.
Hey, great presentation, guys. And thank you for sharing your technical architecture, too. Not everybody's doing that, so that was very helpful. We're also a big AWS shop. I work for Hilton, and we just became an Adobe customer, too. We're onboarding you guys right now for some stuff there on the data side. Follow-up question on the QuickSight one. So you talked about how you developed that. How about the actual, the way they charge, I think, is based on user licenses and all that?
Yep.
So how did you determine who gets that license and how many users? Is it for everybody? Is it leaders only? How did you guys go about, and how did you justify it at the end of the day? Because it gets a little pricey from what I saw.
So yes, even though we have a ambitious TAM, based on where we are with our journey, we are still a couple of hundred users that are like active on a monthly basis. So we still haven't reached the point where we have to really worry about like the ballooning AWS license cost. And that is something, given at the scale at which Adobe operates, I'm sure we have a flexibility in terms of negotiating what those license costs would be. Not yet. That is definitely something on our mind, yes. Yeah. But right now, we actually take that, it's part of the OpEx of building the platform currently. Or COGS, sorry, not OpEx, COGS. Yeah.
Who's got the next one? All right.
In order to make your product successful, and you mentioned you're doing showbacks, not exactly chargebacks yet, how do you avoid getting garbage in, garbage out? What's your policy for tag adherence? Making sure that you're appropriately reporting back on your data?
Great question. So given how complex we have a very diverse set of environment. So for direct spend, we have a combination of tagging as well as metadata. So thankfully, we have built, again, over the past few years, we've built an onboarding system, which we call CAMP, which is Cloud Access Management Portal, where for every new account that gets provisioned, you're required to put in certain metadata fields that gets passed down. So it's almost like that's exactly what Ryan was saying. We bring in all of these metadata elements into Maverick. So that's one way of identifying and showing back the right spend through this is one stream. Second one is we have a tagging policy in place, not as comprehensive that as we would like it to be. So we use partly tagging to do that. And then the third piece for the internal platforms is we get the usage data from the platforms itself. They have their own, either it is Excel, Splunk, or New Relic, whatever system they're using to track that, we bring that in. So it's almost like depending on the maturity of the team that is allocating, we call the maturity a CMI, which is Cost Maturity Index. So on a level of 1 to 5, every team stands somewhere in between that spectrum. One is like, yeah, I have bare minimum tagging, I have bare minimum thing, there's no automation, here's an Excel, go figure it out. 5, on the other hand, is fully automated, I have 100% coverage, I can onboard today, and then I'm ready to go. Most of our teams are somewhere in between that, where it's 80%, 80-20 rule. So we're still kind of figuring that out, but mostly it's the combination of these three things is how we've been doing it.
Yeah, and when Karthik was mentioning CAMP, we do quarterly audits and all that data where we have people make them go in and recertify everything they've submitted. And then obviously when we're talking through like the anomaly detection of the data that's coming through, that can also help safeguard against that.
Excellent questions, guys. We are just a little bit over time, so we're going to wrap it up. We have a short break, about 25-minute break right now. Grab yourself some coffee or tea or cookies. The next round of breakout starts at 3:15.
And we'll be hanging
Big
out
round
here.
of applause.
So
Thank you so
Thank you, everyone.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Check out more FinOps X 2024 content on our YouTube channel on the 2024 playlist. Support our channel by liking, subscribing, clicking the notification bell, and by leaving comments and questions for our speakers. We appreciate your support.